So welcome back to the follow-up channel. And here we are, the Billionaire Cinderella contract by Michelle Smart. So we got to chapter 3 the other day. Hold on just a moment. Okay. One moment. Alright, so we're on 36. Strangely enough, the thing playing on her mind the most out of everything was Damien's indifference towards his family. It was an indifference she guessed was reciprocated. Who called their mother by their first name? How utter alien was that? And what kind of mother only saw her children if they made an appointment through her staff? That wasn't just alien, that was... She couldn't think of the word to describe how mind-blowing she found it, but figured it explained a lot about his icy persona. Mia spoke to her mom every day. They met up at least once a week, and she didn't see her sister as much, but that was only because Amy worked shifts and Mia tended to work evenings, their days off rarely coinciding. They still spoke lots and messaged all the time and got together whenever they could. It hadn't always been like that. Their father's sudden death almost a decade ago had the effect of a grenade being thrown at them. That grenade had detonated and caused what Mia had once feared was irreparable damage. Slowly, though, the damage had repaired. There would always be scars, but Mia, Amy, and their mom were now as whole and as tight a family unit as they could be. She had to pray there would be no fallout from this job she'd been given. She straightened. In a flash, it came to her how she could get out of this. Damien, speaking his name out loud for the first time, was as strange and experience as everything else she'd been through that day. It seemed to just roll off her tongue, which immediately longed to have it roll off again. She shook the strange notion away and focused. You said you shortlisted other actresses for this job and let one of them do it. I only agreed because I thought you were blackmailing me. But as you're not, then it's too late, he interrupted tonelessly. I won't say anything, she pleaded. She would beg if she had to. Please, I'll give you the money back and sign anything you want. I said it's too late. His face turned towards hers. The darkness in his eyes glittered. We've been seen together. But we've only had one date. Believe me, my Vida, I would gladly swap you for another actress, but it's too late. The wheels of our love affair have been set in motion. After one date? She asked in disbelief. I'm being watched and my communications monitored. By who? My brother. She stared at him in utter shock. Her head was ready to explode with all that happened that day, and his little nugget of information could have ignited it. His jaw clenched, anger etched deep in his features. She had the feeling that the anger was directed at himself. He hadn't meant to reveal that. It had been a slip of the tongue, and for the first time she felt a pang of sympathy for him. Emiliano is the one behind all of this? Question mark. His answer was silent, broke only when the car came to a stop outside her door. Tomorrow we'll eat at my apartment, Damien said curtly. My driver will collect you at 7. Her sympathy vanished at his arrogant assumption. I'm performing tomorrow night. I fly back to Buenos Aires on Wednesday. It has to be tomorrow. I'm working. Get your understudy to fill in for you. Why don't you get your understudy to fill in for you in Buenos Aires? She retorted pointedly. I do not have an understudy, he informed her through what sounded like gritted teeth. I do not have an understudy, he informed her through what sounded like gritted teeth. Guess what? I don't have an understudy either. I've got 8 shows left, and then on Sunday the tour is over. And she still didn't have another job lined up. I'm not pulling out of any of them, so don't even think about asking me to. Or, in your case, ordering me to. I've agreed to be available for you next week, so don't push me any further. His eyes narrowed 2 tiny points. Hold on just a minute. Sorry, my bosses are going from one room to another. It's a doctor's office. She could almost feel the lasers of the affronted dislike shooting from them. I will collect you after your performance, he said. His voice now clicked. Pack an overnight bag. I'm not staying the night. Then cancel your performance and spend the evening with me. No. A sudden breeze kissed her cheeks as the driver opened the door for her. Before she could get out, long, warm fingers closed around her wrist, and Damien's face was inches from hers, close enough that she could see the individual hairs of his trimmed black goatee and the beginnings of stubble breaking out across his jawline. Close enough for the exotic cologne he wore to dive into her airwaves and send her pulses surging. A smile played on his lips and his eyes swirled menacingly. You will spend tomorrow night in my apartment, my vida, he said in a low voice, and you will spend next week in it too, as per the contract you signed. I'm paying you a fat fee to do a job, and I expect you to fulfill it, and fulfill it to the best of your abilities. Is that understood? Swallowing back the moisture in her mouth, dimly aware of his driver waiting for her to get out and likely paying attention, Mia smiled back and brought her mouth to Damien's ear to whisper, "Let go of now, or I will scream." She didn't mean to touch him, but the tip of her nose brushed against his earlobe, and frightened of the jolt that crashed through her, she quickly reared back, eyes clashing, his nostrils flared. Barely a second passed in that look before he loosened his hold and dipped his head to place his mouth against her ear, and it was enough for her stomach to flip over and for the fuzziness to envelop her brain. The only screams a man wants to hear from a woman's mouth are the screams of pleasure, he whispered cuttingly. The only thing a man will want to do with your mouth, though, is to zip it up. With the warmth of his breath lingering against her skin, it took another beat before she realized Damien had let go of her wrist and settled back into the seat. While she tried to open her contracted throat and get her lungs to function properly, he was staring at her with the look of a man who knew he'd dealt a zinger of a finale. A thick black brow rose as he bestowed her with a sardonic smile. Good night, my Vida. I will dream of you. Their eyes clashed again, fire, ice, raging between them, and something else. A pulse. A charge she never felt before, but which she instinctively knew spelled danger. Don't have any nightmares, she said in the sweetest voice she could muster before jumping out of the car, thanking the driver and doing her best not to run to the sanctuary of her flat. And this concludes this chapter, or this page. We'll continue on page 41. Thank you for tuning in to follow up for another segment of We Read Wednesday and a book by Michelle Smart. Have a great day.